About 50 million people are living with epilepsy the world over. 3/4 of people living with this condition in low and middle income countries, including Nigeria, do not have access to the required treatment needed for this condition. Today on Sound Health, our focus is on managing the condition effectively. I'm Olasumbo. Welcome to the show. Thanks for staying with us. It's still Sound Health on Lagos Television. On today's edition, an electrophysiologist, Mutala Bankole, will enlighten us on how to manage epilepsy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, epilepsy has no identifiable cause in about half the people with the condition. In the other half, the condition may be traced to hereditary. How true is this?
It could actually be hereditary. Apart from being hereditary, epilepsy could be as a result of traumatic. Traumatic means possibly as a result of injury to the brain. That could be due to road traffic accidents. It could also be possibly due to a fall. Maybe someone fell from somewhere, then hit his head, possibly on the floor or any other place. So it could be hereditary. That.
Okay, what about birth defects?
That's another causes. From what you said earlier, which is actually the fact. For all cases of epilepsy, we have about 70% of them, which are could either be due to traumatic brain injury, could be as a result of post-strokes, could be as a result of birth defects, just like you asked, could also be hereditary, some other few cases. But in 70% of the cases, the causes is not well established.
Okay.
Research are still ongoing.
Okay. Apart from seizures, what are the other symptoms of this condition?
The symptoms of epilepsy disorder is they have aura. What I mean by aura is before the seizure, that is the attack, let's say, some of the epileptic patients will tell you the epilepsy is about to start. Some of them may not even tell you, they will shout, some of them will shout. Some could be as a result of epigastric discomfort, that is, they tell you something is running in their stomach. Some of them will tell you something is running on their head. So they knew something was coming. Some of them is dizzy spell. They possibly have a kind of dizziness before the attack happens. So they do have what we call aura. So another symptoms we don't find in most epileptic patients is post-seizure, possibly general body weakness or post-ictal sleep. Some of them after the seizure, they sleep, they are tired so they sleep. Then some of them, there's what we call post-seizure confusion. At least there was a case I noticed where a patient who had epilepsy, and after the episode, someone was trying to revive him. The patient was able to have access to a cutlass and he has to be going after the person. Possibly he felt the person wanted to kill him. So he was like confused. Some of them just wander about. Immediately after the seizure, you see them walking without stopping. So these are some of the symptoms we found in some epileptic patients.
What are some of the things that trigger seizure in people living with this disorder?
There are several triggers of seizure, and it is peculiar to all the people living with epilepsy. Some of them, it could be as a result of stress. Some, it could actually be as a result of possibly skipping sleep deprivation, not sleeping the night before, or not resting. Some of them, it could be as a result of hunger. To others, it could be as a result of some smell, some odor can trigger people's seizure. It could also be as a result of possibly light. Some of them, when they see some certain kind of light, or where there are more a kind of a crowd, some of them do develop seizure as a result of that. Then another major trigger that I've not mentioned is skipping medication, because some of them believes, okay, I'm okay now, possibly I don't need to use my medication today. So when they skip it, is one of the major reasons why they actually develop seizure.
What about rain?
Yeah, rain is actually one of it. You know, weather generally, that was why I was talking about light. Weather generally do trigger seizure, but it actually depends on the patient.
Is it true seizure should not last more than 5 minutes? If this happens, what are the implications?
That is why you have something like 911. I don't know the number, we actually call it here. 111 or yeah. Actually, every seizure is supposed to last between 1 and 5 minutes. Possibly some of them last even few seconds. Like in absence seizure, we are expecting it to last like 2-3 seconds. So some of them like 3 minutes, at most 5 minutes. Even if seizure will be like extending more than 5 minutes, it will have something like a stopover. Like in the case of status epilepticus. When I say status epilepticus, I mean not stopping seizure. These are seizures that when one episode finished, another one starts over. Status epilepticus is more or less like the chronic stage of epilepsy, whereby there is need for the patient to be put on emergency. You have repeated seizure. After one episode, another one comes up. So in this case, when the patient had an epilepsy and he stopped for like 5 minutes, we're expecting him to have post-seizure relapse, possibly sleep or general other symptoms. But instead of that, the patient developed another seizure. After the other one, another one. Then in that case, we need to possibly call for an emergency. So that patient needs to see the doctor immediately.
All right. Okay, for years we've had there is no cure for this condition. How then can this disorder be managed?
Yeah, epilepsy can be controlled. As a child, it's not even years. As a child, I've had a lot of stories too. There is this story of lizard, and there is the other story of what do you call it? Possession. That is a demonic possession, and that's why, as a child, you notice most of our female child or male child, we have this long mark trying to possibly cure their epilepsy. And there is this other one, making use of cow urine. We call it, I think Yoruba people call it egunogo, I understand, or some other names. The reason why we use that was that we felt traditionally we could actually do something. But generally, we won't say epilepsy has a cure, but it can be controlled. Controlling epilepsy is quite easy, generally around the world, even in Nigeria here. So what we just need to do is, when the patient comes around, tell you about his kind of epilepsy. We put the patient through a diagnosis. That's why you have an electrophysiologist. You possibly let the patient carry out an EEG test. Otherwise, the patient can still see this thing for an MRI. Then afterwards, you know whether the patient epilepsy is actually generalized or partial seizure. So when you get to know that, you will know the kind of medication as a doctor to give to the patient. And when they give the patient continues to use the medication continuously for a certain duration of times. Afterwards, they start to reduce it. And when they reduce it and the seizure has totally reduced and the patient is not having it again, well, the seizure has been controlled, but the patient we still have to watch out for triggers. But generally, seizures are controlled.
Are you saying there are some people living with this condition and they don't experience seizure at all?
Yeah, there are a lot of people living with the disorder that are not experiencing seizure right now. In fact, in the world statistics, about 70% of epileptic cases can be controlled. Only 30% of it can't be controlled. So those ones, they manage it by trying as much as possible to manage the trigger, those things that trigger the seizure.
Okay. According to the World Health Organization, 3/4 of people living with epilepsy in low and middle income countries, including Nigeria, do not have access to the treatment or health care that they need. How true is this, and what is the way forward?
Actually, the area of challenge. Like personally, because of that challenge, I decided to possibly with colleagues and friends form the epilepsy ambassador. Like looking at what happens in our environment. Some of the patients will come around, you see them, okay, go and get your drugs. They don't have the money to actually purchase the drug. Some of them cannot even pay for the test. You see some of them come around, they have the option of either paying for the test or buying the drug. So you just tell them, you know what, the drug we actually treat. Possibly you go for the drug and actually, but the thing really is this: a patient needs to go through diagnosis before using medication. But when the patient has no money, and you have to possibly give him the option of using the medication that will control his epilepsy. So as a result of that, we came up with the Epilepsy Ambassador of Nigeria, and the essence of that is to try as much as possible to create awareness. So when you create awareness and people get to know about their status, they get to know about what to do when these people have seizure, how to help them, then we can then try as much as possible to reach the government. Most of them actually have challenges managing themselves. So for that reasons, and that was why I was talking about the Epilepsy Foundation. The essence of the Epilepsy Foundation is just like for 3 functions. 1, hope. 2, educate or advocate. Then 3, cure. Hope means giving hope to the patient that there is actually a possibility of them living without possibly experiencing seizure all the time. Then educate means the general public need to be educated to learn about what epilepsy is all about. Advocate means you're talking about talking to the government that these people are actually Nigerians, they have a right. They have a right to live. They have a right not to be stigmatized against them. They also have a right to actually have access to medication, even when they don't have money. Because most, that's actually the reason why we talk about advocacy. Then the last one, cure. When we advocate and the government buying into it, possibly a bill is passed, a lot of funds are raised for research in epilepsy. We're looking in future, we'll be talking about cure, not even control.
SMS on 0818-815-3695 or follow us on social media at HealthTV Social,